Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Anthony, I'm good. How are you?
It's been a rough morning.
Really? Tell me.
So this morning my wife wakes up and she shouts down. She said, Have you ever had a pain across your body like somebody's poking a voodoo doll?" And I said, and I yelled up, "No!" And she says, "How about now?"
It shouldn't be funny, but it is. I had a whole cow thing prepared, but I'm not even going to go.
Sorry, I feel like I'm ruining your dad jokes, Chris.
Oh, man, it's pretty good. I just set them up and you knock them down, Anthony. Anthony, I'm going to ask you a question. This is, you and I are such big fans of Seinfeld. This is like Festivus. This is like the annual airing of grievances for us. We're talking today about conflict and the art of the difficult conversation. So, the first question that I'm supposed to read on the cold open here is, what conversations are you avoiding right now? And I'll say ... with me, Anthony. What aren't you saying, Anthony?
I tried to get out of this podcast, Chris. What are you talking about?
I've been avoiding trying to say, I don't want to do this anymore, but we end up doing it 3 days a week. All right. So here's a shocking statistic. 85% of workplace conflicts stem from conversations that never happen. That's from MIT Sloan. Xavier's Wade Foster avoided a critical conversation with his co-founder for weeks, and it almost destroyed their partnership. Today on How to Founder, Anthony, we're going to be talking about managing conflict. I am your host, Chris Franks. With me is the well-coiffed, well-rested, and well-dad-joked, may I say, Mr. Anthony Franco. We are joined today by Mr. John Knowlton, who I could tell is going to be a terrific guest because he's already just given us a tremendous amount of crap while we were before the stage. John is a faith-driven entrepreneur who co-founded a $1 billion wealth management firm before retiring at 51. His career spans, makes me feel sad about myself, John, that you retired at 51. That's fine. His career spans from jail chaplaincy to leading a CEO peer advisory group known as C12. John's upcoming book, Thinking for Success, distills decades of leadership lessons into 52 mindset upgrades. He helps leaders rewire their thinking to build lives of true abundance. This thinking thing, John, what is this thing you call thinking? Like, it's just not something Anthony and I really are ever accused of. So thinking for success, I'm just not familiar with that thing.
Well, hopefully as we unfold the conversation, we'll think a little bit together about how to deal with people and conflict and what good can come on the other side of that.
Which really is the theme of the podcast. If Anthony and I are together, we can maybe actually equal one person as far as thinking goes, which is, it's really what we're hoping to achieve in most times that we're together, Anthony. All right. So let's actually talk about this topic today. Founders, Anthony, I think you would agree, we are terrible. As a whole, we are terrible at difficult conversations. We don't like to have them. Sometimes they can be incredibly challenging. Why do we as founders consistently fail at having difficult conversations?
Is that for me or that's for John?
No,
right?
It's John.
Yeah, John.
Okay. Chris, you said
I was just making sure you agreed with me, Anthony.
I don't agree with you, but I'll let John answer.
See? Oh, that's great.
Hey, there you go. Very meta.
Maybe we're starting some conflict now. Well, I think what happens is there's something that needs to be addressed. And for whatever reason, busyness, we don't want to blow something up. We don't want to cause a relationship problem. We want to extract more work out of somebody and not derail them. But whatever the reason, we let the little thing go. And so we miss an opportunity to have a little conversation. And then another thing happens. And now we've got two things go. And eventually we've skipped all the little conversations and we've got to have the big, huge, scary conversation, right? Emotionally scary. This could be the end of our relationship. This could wreck everything. And it causes, then we're starting to get all the stomach acid and worry about it. How are we going to approach it? How are they going to receive it? And so I think it's mostly busyness. We just drive right past the conversation. And the key to having wholesome conflict is to have lots of little conversations. It's true in a marriage. It's true in a business partnership. It's true with your customers. It's true with your vendors. Have the little conversations that are not emotionally landmines or nuclear options, so that you don't have to have the nuclear conversation.
Anthony, it makes a ton of sense. And also, I feel like with founders, we're constantly so busy. There's always something else that's important on the plate that will allow us to not focus, like not actually sit down. I think sometimes those conversations fall into the urgent, but not, or important, but not urgent category. Agree with John, Anthony?
Gosh, there's so much I have going on in my head about this. The first one is what pops up in my head, John. So first of all, I agree with you, but there's a balance too, right? Because I wrote down this thing called micro conflicts. Like, have these little conversations before you have big ones. It's a great point, but at what point does that become nagging?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's in the eye of the beholder, right? What's the context for the conflict or the conversation? If we have little conversations, they don't have to be conflictual. But what's the context? Now, a lot of times when we have conflict, it's because you're not doing what I want, or on the other side, I'm not doing what you want. And that's all pretty well rooted in self. You're not making me happy, so I need you to change in order for me to be happy. And I don't know that that's the basis for a good relationship. So if the context is, hey, we've got a mission, and these activities need to align so that we can accomplish our mission, then I don't think it's nagging, because it's not about making John happy or satisfying Anthony's idiosyncratic wishes, but it's about the mission, serving our people, delivering our product, building our tool. And so if you can have mission-based conversations, then I don't think it's a nag, because it's important to everybody, not just to one person.
It's funny, Anthony, as I'm listening to this conversation, as we're talking about this, the things that pop up into my mind are not small conversations with employees. I feel like that's something I can do, but this feels like co-founder conversations, or very critical conversations with maybe investors or advisors, et cetera, but I think what John said right off the bat is about alignment. It's about mission alignment, making sure that the both of you are on the same page. And then I guess that would hold true for employees as well. First of all, foundationally, Anthony, we've talked about that noble cause really early on in the podcast, but maybe reiterating
Episode 1.
Episode 1. Is that the foundation of being able to have these conversations, Anthony?
Yeah. So yeah, but there's also, I mean, 100% being mission driven, but there's also those conflicts where somebody should just not do that regardless of the mission. Like you have to tell them to stop that, right?
Why are you looking right at me as I say that,
Anthony? How many times have I had to tell you to stop picking your nose, Chris? And how does that have anything to do with our mission?
I mean, frequently, but I thought this was an audio podcast for 110 episodes. All right, so we have this idea that mission alignment helps, but John, I think that there's something that's underlying this that's even more, and you hit the nail on the head early on, which is it's about a relationship, and it's about the depth of a relationship. And it's funny as in all seriousness, Anthony and I can have conflict and argue, but it doesn't affect the depth of our relationship. We've known each other for years and we trust each other and love each other. Sometimes that's taken us a really long time to develop that depth of relationship. But that relationship, that trust, I think helps you have these conversations. John, true?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a parenting principle that says connect before you correct. In other words, we need to have a relational contact before we come up with some sort of corrective conversation. And I think it's good parenting and it's good life skill. Hey, let's make sure that the other person knows we're not threatening to break up here. This is about some behavior that I think maybe we need to correct, or I have a misunderstanding or something like this. And so, yeah, feedback is always about the future. If I don't think you and I have a future together, I'm not going to waste having a difficult conversation. And so, since feedback is always about our future together, our shared future, let's just be clear about that. Hey, I love you. This isn't about our relationship, but this is about behavior, or this is about my question, or this is about a decision that I just want to work through together, those kinds of things. So absolutely, you got to, the difficult conversation is always in the context of a relationship. And unless it's a breakup conversation, it's our future together.
It's a great point. So if we think about this as it's not necessarily one conversation, but it really is about having a trusting relationship so you can have smaller conversations along the way. Anthony, I want to ask you a question, which is, has there ever been a time when not having a critical conversation has worked out well? Or is it one of those things where if you punt this, if you procrastinate this, it's always just going to get bigger?
I was thinking about that exact thing, Chris. Like, I'm surprised you brought it up. The answer for me is yes, 100%. There are circumstances where the best course of action is to not have the conflict. And I know this is about having those difficult conversations, but sometimes things have this way of magically working itself out. If somebody's having a difficult time being successful in my under my leadership, there'll be certainly you have those little conversations about, hey, you want to do it this way, and hey, you want to avoid that. And then there'll be other times where it gets to that point where it's obvious it's not going to work out. And if you are consistent in the messaging about they're not meeting the mission, sometimes they'll figure it out for themselves, and you don't have to have the big conversation. They'll see the writing on the wall, and they'll leave on their own, or their teammates will. Or I can't even tell you how many times I've told myself, hey, be patient on this one, sit on it a little bit. As long as the individual is not causing major turmoil within the organization or doing something that is like, you need to let this person go now. Sometimes it's better to be a little bit patient. And on the flip side, it's worked itself out where they leave, or it's worked itself out where they figured it out on their own. And those are fewer and far between, but I consider those huge wins.
John, I feel like Anthony's been trying to tell me it's not going to work out now for 123 episodes.
No, I just tell you straight out, Chris.
He's waiting for me to get it, and I still haven't gotten it.
Well, as awkward as this sounds, I want to agree with Anthony's broader point, but I will take a little different context. And so the question was, is it okay to pass, let things go? And I think with employees, I actually am going to be a little bit Anthony and say, with employees, if you think you maybe should fire him, you should have fired him a month ago.
So I totally agree with that.
Okay.
All right. Totally agree with that. Yeah.
What I was hearing was, maybe they'll just, leave on their own, which is maybe sort of like management chicken. I don't want.
No. I totally agree with you on if if you're like, I should let this person go, it's already too late. I totally agree with you on that.
Okay, cool.
But there's a underlying point here, John, which is, and I think this is the piece that I was taking from Anthony as part of the conversation, which is you need to ask yourself what's going on too. Because lots of times when you go through this world of conflict, sometimes it's not as much about the other person as it about some sort of conflict that you have going on internally. But sometimes it's really hard for you to notice that. And so before you have this difficult conversation with, let's say, a co-founder or a key employee or so again, somebody critical for your business, how would you recommend that somebody does some sort of self-reflection?
Oh, that's absolutely it. There's a lot of things that when you're hot about it seems super important. And then after a day or two, you know what, that's not something I want to waste any energy on or put into somebody else's head. But I think I just believe this absolutely to my core, that every leader should start each day with some quiet. And so I think
not now on the podcast, Anthony. We don't want you to he was about to start meditating right here. And it's like, well, we've lost Anthony. That's great.
Well, if you wake up and immediately turn your brain into action machine, that's our iPhones and Android devices, they're scientifically designed to distract us from what's important. The smartest minds in the world work on that problem. And so if we can have time every day, I think the morning is the best, to have time set aside where we can think about our day, reflect on yesterday, plan through this day. How am I going to add value to each person I'm planning to interact with today? That gives you some emotional distance from whatever it was. And that's a time when you can reorient, refocus on what's really important. Because when we're running hot and hard, it's just really difficult to have some emotional tolerance or have a window of tolerance, because it gets closed throughout the day as we're dealing with stuff. And so that I think that quiet time in the morning is a critical time to help you get clarity about where to spend your emotional energy.
This I feel like might be the crux of this conversation, Anthony, which is oftentimes, so what John is saying is backed by all the modern research on leadership, which is a good leader has to have a high level of self-awareness and emotional regulation. And so the best leaders across every single category need those two things. They need to be aware when they're maybe not in the best possible place and be able to regulate their emotions. Oftentimes, startups and your company, Anthony, if an iPhone is perfectly designed to pull you out and to distract you, oftentimes startups seem perfectly designed to make you completely miserable, not self-aware, and not emotionally regulated. It can be very difficult to do that, Anthony. Agree?
Yeah, I was thinking through this as you were talking, John, and I think this comes with just experience. I was going to say maturity, but that doesn't suit me very well. But it comes with experience. And Chris, we've talked about this in the past, where early on in my entrepreneurial career, I was, essentially, I was like, I can't believe these people are choosing to work with me. And so I avoided the conflict because I didn't want, I wanted to show gratitude for the person choosing to come work with us. And so that's why I avoided conflict. And then I started to recognize that people that took advantage of that weren't taking advantage of me. They were taking advantage of the mission and their teammates. So I became very confrontational, purposefully, I'm going to get through this, to where the pendulum swung improperly the other direction, where I was confronting and micromanaging everything. And then I came back to, I need to take a beat. Just like you said, I need to take a beat. I need to reflect. Is this a hill I'm worth dying on? Is this something that I need to really chase, or can it wait? Will it get better? Can it work itself out? Can I reframe the conversation? So I just think that comes with, experience, and knowing what matters and what you need to confront right away, and knowing what you can have some patience with.
John, I think the exact opposite is true. So if we have to say that we need to be curious about how we're showing up, and maybe this conflict and this emotional, pain that I'm feeling may not have everything to do with my co-founder or some other, key employee. We also have to do that for the other person that we're showing up for. That can be hard, particularly if you're frustrated, particularly if you're in a place that you want to have this difficult conversation. How would you recommend, if you're coaching Anthony and I, to say, you need to go have a difficult conversation? I really want to have this difficult conversation, but being able to show up and being curious about that other person.
Oh, the questions are so much more powerful than statements. And share an example from my life. We did a key merger 7 or 8 years ago with a wealth management business. It was amazing from a business perspective, in that my firm brought some M&A capabilities, and the other firm had some amazing investment management capabilities. Put them together. Now we've got this great platform we can dump all these deals into. Both the other founder and I each had in our heads that we would evaluate all the processes from both firms and take the best ones. So we did that with employee benefits. If one firm had more days off, we applied the more generous policy to both the combined firm. So we were going to do that with all of our client service processes, everything. And secretly, I thought, well, I'm sure we'll take about 75% of ours. And the other co-founder said, oh, surely we'll take at least 75% of ours. And you can imagine there could be like there. And it turned into feelings of, well, one of the other founders said, I want to punch you in the throat. He didn't. So that's some intensity.
Yeah.
That's intense, man.
Right.
What we had to realize, and ultimately we did, was that the issue wasn't, that's a bad person, he's selfish, she's a jerk. Instead of 75% mine, 75% yours, the reality was we needed 100% new processes, because what got us both to the levels we were at was not sufficient for the new firm and the ongoing growth we anticipated. So we had all these intense feelings, which we needed to acknowledge as people to work through the relationship so that we could continue to work together. And then once we got past that, I feel like punching you in the throat, but I'm not going to. What's going on? Why are you so stubborn? And then we got through the emotions, and then we could talk about this issue that's out here, which is, what are the processes that are going to work? And then we took a rational approach to that and ultimately realized none of the processes work. We got to start from scratch. And then we developed some teams from both units and all this kind of stuff, and then worked it out.
It's funny because I feel like punching you in the throat is what Anthony saves my name under in his iPhone. So when I call him, it just pops up.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to get tactical. There's a moment, let's say that there's some conflict brewing, and that Anthony and I have been arguing about this moment, and then we're coming to tactically. Is this something you do ad hoc? Do you schedule some time? If you schedule some time, how do you schedule it? How do you set up this conversation? What do you do to suggest to not blindside somebody else as part of the conversation? And then, well, I'll stop there because I think having the conversation probably requires some additional context. But how do you set this conversation up, John?
I think blindsiding someone is just setting you both up for a terrible outcome. And so I honestly think it's important to schedule. My wife and I schedule conversations. It's like, hey, I really think we need to talk through this thing. Does 4 o'clock work for you? Or would morning be better? Those kinds of things. Let the other person choose. Give them the space and the time to be clear, to make sure that they don't have some other stressful right before this one. And so absolutely, I want to talk about this. When's a good time? Make sure that it's a good time for both of you. So I think I answered that question. Was there more to it though, Chris?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Anthony, how do you set these up?
I think it depends on the type of quote conflict we're talking about. So there's this old adage, praise in public, critique in private. I totally agree with that. But there's also this notion of correct. And if somebody's doing something wrong that's a minor infraction, that you could just go up to them with where they are and say, hey, why don't you do it this way? Or maybe you didn't know that this is or hey, when I've done it this way, it's worked out better for me. I think I think you need to do that early and often so it doesn't become a conflict. You're just teaching them. It's more teaching than correcting. Like, you might want to consider doing that. And I also think there's another way to address to have critique in public without it sounding like a critique. And we talked about this last week, Chris, when Hark was on. We talked about EOS and the scorecard. And I think the scorecard, having a scorecard that you're measuring everybody against, that everybody on everything on that scorecard has an owner. And if something's not moving or progressing like we want it to, that's essentially a public critique without calling that person out. And I think it works really well. Like instead of critiquing somebody, you're presenting everybody with the goals of the team and then assigning an owner that almost has this, you're setting them up to be self-aware of the critique that's coming their way if they're not hitting the numbers. Anyway, that's how I was thinking about it as we were talking about it.
I think
Anthony,
go ahead, please, John.
I agree with that 100%. And I guess I distinguish like feedback from performance reporting from these like conflictual conversations. So feedback, I also think feedback can be positive or corrective. And so getting in the habit of providing regular feedback of all kinds is really a great managerial tool. And I always give people permission to receive feedback as well. So maybe they just got a phone call that their dog died or something like, hey, do you mind if I give you some feedback? First question. If they give you permission, then you say, hey, when you do this, it impacts the mission, the company, your colleagues like this. I'd like you to keep that up. Or could you change that? Okay, great. And so it's super low emotion. It's very, very dry. And that could be a positive or corrective. Hey, Anthony.
I've tried that with my wife. Do you mind if I give you some feedback? And the answer is always no. So I don't exactly. I need to work that. I need to work that through with my wife. I know that's a me thing. That's not anybody else.
Well, I mean, it's when you bring up the scorecard. It really is just not, it's not that great of a
moment. When I'm handing out review cards to my kids on how good the dinner was, that's probably not the right way to do that.
Probably not the best. John, there is this incredible, powerful thing that Anthony was just talking about, which is focusing the conversation on, and in this case, data, right? So something that's more tangible than just feeling, than just being like, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because we are missing this key metric. It's so critical for our company. That's one technique, I think, as far as actually having this conversation. You should comment on that or anything else that you can do that will help ease when you are having one of these, difficult or impactful conversations.
Yeah, I think it's totally fine to say, I feel this, I notice this, to kind of own your part of the burden. If we start talking about you see, I changed my hand motions. I was going now I'm saying you. Then we're going to get into, ad hominems and these defensive walls come up and all this kind of stuff. And so I think it's great to say, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I saw. Can we talk through this and just invite a conversation? And it's helpful to go into these type of conversations with clarity about what you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to win or are you trying to win a friend? In other words, how do we get back to a place where we can be okay? And it might be about metrics, it might be about behavior, it might be about activity. But if you go into it with, how do I win a friend back here? Then you're going to come to it with an attitude of, how can I help? Are there ways that I can provide more, contribute more, support this thing more, whatever the case might be, so that we own what we feel, but we're also open to providing something different so that we can all move forward together.
Can I add to that, Chris? Because I think John brings up a really good point, and how I've started to approach these conversations, and that is, oftentimes when I have to confront somebody about something that's not working for the company, I also have to realize it's probably not working for them either. And so I actually, instead of doing that, like what I need from you, I think about, like, what's good for this person. Is it good for this person to stay here? They're struggling. Is it the right decision for them? And I've actually had that conversation with folks, and I'll tell them, it's like, hey, look, you're struggling here. Here's what it's going to look like for the next 3 months. Is that something you want to sign up for? Genuinely caring about what they want to sign up for. Now, will they be honest with me all the time? No, not all the time. But you can stoke that out. Like, hey, if it's not something you want to sign up for, let's work together to find another place for you, either here or in another company. I'll participate in that effort with you. So it's really, you said friend. I actually think that's a really solid piece of advice. What would you tell your friend if they were working for you, but you're not part of the equation, right? Like, what would you tell them? Here's what it's going to look like working for this boss. I'm the boss, and work through it with them on what the best resolution for them is going to be. And oftentimes it lines up with what's the best outcome for you and the company too.
We need to get to this speed round, but I want to observation and then get your opinion on this, John, which is, so Sir John Whitmore is sort of the father of performance coaching. And what he says in performance coaching is you must avoid defensiveness at all costs. At the moment defensiveness, there's another book, I can't remember the name of it, that discusses being inside or outside. And it's like whether you're in a place where you can receive that feedback or if you're not. And obviously that has a lot to do with culture and the environment we set as leaders. But talk about that idea of defensiveness and trying to make sure that when you're having these conversations, that the walls don't come up, because the moment the walls come up, you're done. You can't, there's no change. There's no evolution of the relationship. Do you have any advice sort of to try to set that environment during these conversations?
Yeah, defensiveness is like a logical mechanism to protect the ego, the sense of self. And so if we can go into the conversation really clear about what's important to us and what's our outcome, what's our goal, and what are we willing to offer, then we're focused on what can we bring and not what can we do to or get the other person to do. And I just think that that really is disarming, if you will. So we're using sort of these military metaphors, right? Defensives, I said disarming. We're trying to not have a fight where we're trying to kill the other person, but rather get through whatever the issue is to the other side. And we can't do that together if we're building walls or raising swords. So I think I might have messed up this conversation, Bob, or I might have, hosed your relationship with this key customer, or, just own a lot of stuff. I had a client who was an international sales manager for a big publicly traded company that was promising things that they operationally couldn't deliver. And he became apologizer in chief. And so one of the tools that that I teach is a relational approach that you could actually start a conversation with. And so it's simple. It's 3 letters, REI.
Uh-oh.
And
REI.
it's,
John,
wait,
you there?
Anthony, I'm still here.
You froze. You said
Froze,
REI and then completely
REI,
froze.
and
So-
then I
so
was
go
going to
back
have
to
to make
REI
up
and go.
what REI stood for, and it wasn't going to go as well as what you're about to say. So.
Okay. R is regret. Anthony, I'm sorry I messed this up, or I'm sorry I wasn't clear. I'm sorry whatever it is. Just
I'm
try
sorry
to
I
own.
hired you. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. That'll be a shorter conversation. We're talking about defensiveness, though.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
And I think that might be cross purposes, avoiding defensiveness. Regret. I'm sorry for my part of this. Empathy. I can imagine how that made you feel. And I'm going to try to do better. And here's how. So if you start a conversation like that, there's no way they're going to be defensive because you've already said, hey, I've got a part in whatever this issue is as well. So apologize for stuff that maybe isn't even your fault. Who cares? Because we're trying to avoid the defensiveness and we're trying to move forward to get past something. And taking responsibility for stuff is a great way to keep the other person's walls down.
We do need to get to the speed round, but there's one other piece of this that I just really feel like we need to touch on, which is if I'm the person and I know that there's going to be a difficult conversation. So Anthony scheduled some time like, hey, I want to talk about X, Y, and Z. We have a tendency on the other side of that conversation to fight, flight, or flee. To me, the hardest one is flee. Fighting is okay if somebody shows up, but if suddenly now I'm just getting completely stonewalled, there is no give and take, and really maybe even silence is part of that conversation. I guess any of those 3, John and then Anthony, I'd like your thoughts as well. Is how do you, if you're the receiver, how do you start to avoid your own defensiveness coming up?
Well, I just want to go back to sort of first principles. Do we have a future together? Do we want to have a future together? If so, I need to just decide we should do this, decide to do a hard thing, which is to stay engaged in this conversation. If one party though is running away, they might not be a good partner, or they might not be somebody that you can build a future with, because if we can't have real conversations, communication is the basis of life. And if you can't have a honest conversation, you got to question the future. Can we have a future together?
It's a pretty poignant one. Anthony, what do you think?
I totally agree. And the last point I want to make about conflict and not addressing things that you need to, it really needs to be more about their teammates. So if you're avoiding conflict, what are you saying to the people that are working with that individual? You're either setting a bar for them to drop to, or you're allowing bad behavior to continue and making their work environment worse. So this isn't necessarily about you or the individual. It's about the rest of the team. And to John's earlier point, the mission.
All right, Anthony, I'll stop canceling that meeting that you keep
Okay.
a hard conversation meeting. I just keep moving it. Really very insightful conversation. But now, John, it is time for the speed round. Are you ready?
Well, I'll say what Henry Kissinger said. Does anybody have questions for my answers?
Right.
Use that.
What pops into your mind? Just give me a brief response. Direct confrontation or gradual approach?
Direct.
Public resolution or private conversations?
Ooh, private first, then public.
I like it. Emotional validation or solution focus?
Both. You can't choose. You have to acknowledge your own emotions and then focus on the future.
This is an interesting one. Document everything or just trust the process?
Can't the process include documentation?
It can also. That's probably an HR episode right there. Third party mediator, or handle it internally.
Start internally, but sometimes we need help.
Very fruitful conversation, Anthony. I really enjoyed this one. What did you learn from today's episode?
All right, so I wrote down micro conflicts are better than macro conflicts. Make the conversation about the mission versus making the leader happy. Connect before you correct. You kind of did this, John. It's a critique sandwich, right? A little bit of a positive thing about the individual, then the critique, then end with the positive thing. So I like that critique sandwich. Use I statements, own your perspective without blaming others. And then when confronting, be in a place to provide feedback to the person as though they were a dear friend. Care about what's best for them as well as what's best for the company and their teammates.
Deep dive recommendations, Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson, Difficult Conversations by Douglas Stone. That's a foundational one. The Power of a Positive No by William Ury, and Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. But all of those will pale in comparison to your book, John, which Anthony is going to put up the little tag right now to show you where we can find, as I'm stalling.
I'm not putting it up just to screw with you, Chris.
I feel like it's a conversation we should have later, Anthony. Where can we find out more information about you? Where can we get your book? Where can we connect, John?
Sure. Thinking for Success is the name of the book, and thinkingforsuccess.com is a website. And the book is 52 stories that upgrade our thinking to boost productivity, problem solving, and relationships. And secret, the book actually starts with a section of stories about relationships. That's foundational to productivity, problem solving, effectiveness, all that kind of stuff. And I found that storytelling was more effective in leading my staff than giving them a principle or telling them what to do. And I've since learned that stories are cognitively privileged. I recently heard some smart person say, and I'm like, yeah, we like stories. We engage with stories. And so the book is really designed for leaders to use with their team. 52 weeks in a year, 52 staff meetings, read the story, have a little conversation about it. And then there's a one line takeaway from each story. And what I found is that using tools like this really helped my people learn to think better and solve their own problems. And we got a lot better versus just telling them what to do.
I really enjoyed the episode. I'm going to be ordering the book for sure. I think it's going to be a powerful one. Anthony, there are 52 weeks in the year except for leap year. And there's the 53rd.
No, is it an extra week?
Yeah.
Did you get an extra week? I thought you got an extra day.
You get an extra day, but it might be an extra Monday.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you all so much for listening. Please be sure to visit us, howtofounder.com, where you can connect with us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube and Apple Podcast and Spotify channels. Remember, you are the pioneer of economic prosperity, and we are really grateful for being there along the way with you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chris.